Part 1. The Trees That Watch. I grew up camping the way my father believed it should be done. Far from roads, far from people, deep enough in the woods that the world felt honest again. He used to say the forest didn't lie. It warned you when something was wrong, and if you paid attention, you lived. If you didn't, you disappeared. I thought those were just words meant to scare a kid into respecting nature. That belief followed me into the Smoky Mountains. I went alone, confident and prepared, or so I thought. The trailhead sign warned that the route was lightly maintained, but I'd seen worse. After the first mile, the path narrowed until it was little more than a suggestion through dense undergrowth. Trees crowded in close, their branches twisting overhead, blocking the sky. The air felt thick and damp, pressing against my skin like wet cloth. The silence was what bothered me most. Not total silence. Birds and insects still existed, but they came in short, broken bursts. A chirp here, a buzz there. Then nothing, as if something had passed through and shut them all up at once. By late afternoon, I reached a small clearing near a creek and decided to make camp. The water moved slowly, dark and reflective, like it didn't want to make noise. As I hammered stakes into the ground, I noticed markings carved into a nearby tree. They were old, deep gouges layered over one another, circles, jagged lines, symbols I didn't recognize. I pressed my fingers against one without thinking. The bark felt warm. That night, the woods refused to settle. Usually, the forest finds a rhythm after dark, but here, everything stayed tense. My fire sounded too loud, each crack echoing farther than it should have. When the flames dipped, the darkness beyond the clearing seemed to creep closer, just a little at a time. That's when I heard footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, circling just outside the firelight. Not an animal. Animals move with purpose or panic. This was careful, curious. I called out, assuming it was another hiker who'd wandered off trail. No response. The steps stopped, replaced by breathing. Deep, steady, patient. It stayed there for a long time, long enough for my fire to burn low and my nerves to unravel completely. I didn't sleep much. When dawn finally came, pale and weak, I stepped outside my tent and found footprints around my campsite. Bare feet, too long, too narrow. And every single one of them led away from the creek and deeper into the mountains. Part 2, the wrong path. I should have left that morning. Packed my gear, turned around, and followed the trail back to my car. Every instinct I had told me that whatever made those footprints wasn't something I wanted to understand. But the longer I stared at them, the more a strange certainty settled in my chest. They weren't leading away from danger. They were inviting me closer. I followed them uphill, away from the creek, and into thicker forest. The ground sloped sharply, and the trees grew closer together, their trunks twisted and scarred like they had been struck by lightning and healed wrong. The air smelled different here, metallic, damp, like rain mixed with rust. My compass began to behave strangely, the needle spinning in slow, useless circles before settling on nothing at all. The path I followed wasn't marked on my map. It wasn't even a proper trail, just a shallow depression in the leaves and dirt, as if something heavy had passed this way over and over. Every so often I heard movement behind me, but whenever I turned, the forest stood perfectly still. Around midday, I found another campsite. It looked abandoned in a hurry. A collapsed tent lay half buried in leaves. Cooking gear rusted where it had been dropped. A backpack hung from a tree branch, torn open, its contents scattered across the ground. There were no bones, no blood, no clear signs of violence, just absence. On a flat stone near the fire pit, someone had scratched words into the surface with a blade or a sharp rock. "Don't follow the voices." I read it twice before the sound reached me. Someone was speaking uphill beyond the trees. The voice was calm, familiar, and impossibly clear. My father's voice. He called my name the way he used to when I was a kid, when he wanted me to come see something important. He told me I was close. He told me I was doing fine. He told me to keep going. My legs locked in place. My father had been dead for 6 years. The voice called again, warmer this time, reassuring me that I didn't need to be afraid, that he'd been waiting for me, that the mountains kept people safe if they listened. I ran. Branches tore at my arms and face as I pushed through the undergrowth, not caring where I was going as long as it was away from that sound. The forest seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, each ridge looking exactly like the last. When I finally collapsed, gasping for air, I realized something was wrong. The sun hadn't moved. It hung low and dim in the same place it had been all day, casting weak, sickly light through the trees. As I struggled to my feet, I noticed the trunks around me were angled inward, leaning just slightly, like they were listening. Part 3. The Camp That Wasn't Mine. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up inside my tent. For several seconds, I just lay there, staring at the thin nylon ceiling, convinced everything that had happened the day before had been a stress-induced hallucination. The voice, the footprints, the impossible sun. I told myself the mountains played tricks on people who stayed alone too long. Then I sat up. My boots were beside the tent, caked in dried mud. My legs ached like I'd been running for hours. My throat burned, raw and tight, as if I'd been screaming. Outside, the forest was wrong. The creek was gone. In its place was a dry, cracked riverbed, the stones bleached white like bones. My campsite looked the same at first glance, but something felt off, like the pieces had been rearranged while I slept. My pack sat farther away than I remembered. The fire pit had shifted a few feet to the left. Even the trees felt closer, crowding in with their twisted branches. I stepped out and noticed the carvings. They were everywhere now. Symbols cut into tree trunks, rocks, even scratched into the dirt itself. Circles broken by lines. Jagged marks layered so thick they looked like scars. Some were fresh, the wood still pale beneath the bark. Others were old and darkened with age. Whatever they meant, they had been repeated for a long time. I recognized one of them. Years ago, I'd read a book about Appalachian folklore, about old warnings left behind by people who understood the mountains better than anyone else. The symbol wasn't a word, it wasn't a name, it meant boundary. That night I kept the fire burning high. I didn't care how much wood it took, as long as the flames stayed strong, the forest kept its distance. But when the fire dipped, even for a moment, I heard movement beyond the clearing. Voices followed soon after, not just my father's this time, men and women, children. Some cried, some whispered, others spoke calmly, telling stories about getting lost, about following trails that didn't exist on any map. They talked about hearing loved ones call their names, about realizing too late that the mountains were listening. Shadows moved between the trees, stretching taller and thinner than anything solid should be. They never crossed into the firelight, but they edged closer whenever the flames weakened. When the fire flared, they recoiled like living things. That's when I understood the truth. The fire wasn't for warmth. It was for protection, and every sound, every symbol, every warning carved into the forest pointed to the same message. If the light died, something else would step out of the dark. Part 4. What lives between the ridges? By the third night, exhaustion had stripped away my denial. The mountains weren't trying to scare me. They were trying to teach me something I was never meant to learn. The symbols, the voices, the shifting forest. They weren't random. They were the aftermath of something that had been happening here for generations. The Smoky Mountains didn't just hide people, they kept them. The voices I'd been hearing weren't lures, not entirely. Some of them were warnings, echoes of people who had realized too late that the trail they followed was wrong. Others belonged to something else, something that had learned how to wear familiar sounds, the way a hunter wears camouflage. That night, the fire burned lower than I wanted. I'd gathered as much wood as I could, but the forest seemed to swallow it faster than it should have. Every log I added cracked and collapsed in seconds, the flames shrinking no matter how hard I tried to feed them. The shadows came closer. They moved in slow, careful motions, stretching across the ground like spilled ink. I could feel them watching, studying the way I shifted my weight, the way my hands trembled. They weren't rushed. They knew time meant nothing here. When the fire finally died, the darkness didn't surge forward. It unfolded. The air grew heavy, thick enough to taste. The forest leaned inward, trees bending just slightly, as if making room for something large. I heard footsteps again, but they didn't circle this time. They approached straight through the clearing. That's when I saw it. It stood taller than any man, its shape constantly changing, never settling on a single form. Parts of it looked almost human. An arm, a shoulder, the suggestion of a face. But they never stayed in the right place for long. It wasn't made of flesh. It was made of absence, of the space where light refused to exist. It stopped a few feet from me. I couldn't see eyes, but I knew it was looking directly at my face. The air around it smelled like wet leaves and turned soil. When it breathed, the sound came from everywhere at once. Then it spoke. In my voice. It repeated my words from earlier that day, mimicking my tone perfectly, asking questions I'd already asked myself. It told me I was lost. It told me the mountains could keep me safe. It told me I didn't need to be afraid anymore. All I had to do was step closer. As it leaned in, I realized something horrifying. It wasn't trying to chase me. It was trying to replace me. Part 5. The Way Out. I survived because I finally listened. My father used to say the forest never lied, but it also never saved you. Survival was something you earned by paying attention to what didn't feel right. Standing there in the dark, facing something that wore my voice better than I did, I realized I'd been reacting instead of thinking. The thing wanted me to step closer, so I stepped back. As it moved forward, perfectly mirroring me, I reached behind without looking and struck my last match. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the flame caught, small but fierce, and the clearing exploded with light. The shadows recoiled instantly, peeling away from the ground like burned skin. The thing screamed, not with a mouth, not with sound, but with pressure. The forest shook as if the mountains themselves were rejecting it. The fire roared higher than it should have, feeding on something I couldn't see. The trees bent outward now, no longer leaning in. I ran. I didn't follow a trail. I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs stopped feeling like they belonged to me. The forest fought me the whole way, branches grabbing, roots shifting underfoot. But I didn't stop. When I collapsed, the ground beneath me was hard and flat. Pavement. The sound of an engine pulled me back into consciousness. Headlights cut through the dark, and voices shouted as hands grabbed my shoulders. Rangers. Real people. They told me I was safe now. They told me I'd been missing for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I tried to explain where I'd been, what I'd seen. They listened politely, the way people do when they don't believe you but don't want to be cruel. A search team went out the next morning to look for my campsite. They found nothing, no clearing, no carvings, no fire pit. According to them, the area I described was miles off any known trail, dense enough that no one should have been able to camp there at all. I went home eventually. I tried to return to normal life, but sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps outside my window. Slow, careful, patient. And when I catch my reflection in the glass, I swear it lingers a moment too long. Because something followed me out of those mountains. Not my body, my voice. And I know one day it will try to call me back. Part 6. Final note. Listen to me. I don't have much time. I can feel it slipping when I try to focus, like my thoughts are being pulled sideways. If this sounds wrong, if I repeat myself, that's not an accident. It's getting harder to keep my words straight. I shouldn't be recording this. I know that. Writing would be safer, but every time I write, I find pages I don't remember finishing. Handwriting that looks like mine but leans the wrong way, like someone copied me from memory. Something is wrong with me. The Smoky Mountains did this, not the falls or the cold or the cliffs. That's what people think kills you out there. That's what they want you to think. The truth is worse. The mountains don't kill you. They don't even hunt you. They learn you. I came back, but I didn't come back whole. The rangers say I was missing for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I swear it was only nights. Fires. Darkness pressing in. Voices whispering just far enough away that I could pretend they weren't talking to me. Time bends there. It folds. Whatever lives between the ridges understands how to step through the cracks. People disappear because the mountains don't let go once they've memorized you. The voices aren't traps. That's the lie. They're rehearsals. They repeat your name so you get used to hearing it without questioning who's speaking. The forest watches how fast you turn your head, how long you hesitate, how fear changes your breathing. It practices, and when it's ready, it sounds exactly like you. I know because it followed me home. I hear it pacing at night, slow and careful, stopping when I wake up. I find dirt on my shoes that smells like wet leaves and old rot. Neighbors swear they've heard me outside whispering, asking to be let in. I wasn't there, I wasn't. But they say it sounded polite, familiar. I've heard recordings, my voice saying my name, saying things I don't remember thinking. Calm, patient, like it's learning how to pass. Doesn't want my body. It wants my life. If you're thinking about camping deep in the Smoky Mountains, listen to me. Please. When you hear a voice calling your name, don't answer. Don't even turn around. Fires aren't for warmth. Trails lie. And the moment you realize the forest is paying attention to you, it already knows enough. If you make it back and something feels wrong, your reflection lagging, your words echoing too late, don't trust yourself. Don't record your voice. Don't go back to the mountains no matter how badly you feel pulled. Because sometimes it doesn't drag you into the woods. Sometimes it lets you leave. And then it waits.